Okay, cheers.
Well, just to start, I think we ended up with almost, again, two types of discussion. One about the people things, which is really where Torbjørn was about, and then more on the technology. Can I just start first with a comment to Torbjørn? The challenges where you were saying that there was real evidence for interoperability reducing costs, yet asset teams are saying no. Is HSE and the Macondo and those safety incidents giving any drive to change that and to increase interoperability?
Yes, I would say so. The drive has always been there, and this is problems that drilling operation faces every day, have been facing all years. So it's not the drive that hasn't been there, but the ability to change is maybe the drive for the ability to change in the cultural parts of the drilling industry is maybe what we see the most, because every people who works in the drilling industry is being asked about from the whole community. People living, the neighbors that have no idea what drilling is, they start asking, how could this happen and what are you doing? So I think the awareness among the people working within the industry will increase, and then also the change will come, I think. Yeah.
Well, the change comes if the legislator says it will happen.
Yeah.
And the NPD and the others. Is that making a difference at all?
I think it's also a political question. In Norway we see that we have Petoro who owns the assets and Statoil as a supplier for the Norwegian government, and these Petoro trying to run all of the Norwegian operations with 16 to 50 employees. It's not hard to manage Statoil and the way they progress in the North Sea and how they are compliant to regulations. I think compliance is maybe the key word here for the oil companies from government regulations. Okay.
Any comments to that at all from Link before we turn more on to, if you like, the technology-related issues? I was struck, David, by your comments on standards and things. You're almost, what's in it for companies like Microsoft and that to develop these the Mura environment? Why are they doing that? And do you think are they trying to dislodge the Schlumbergers and landmarks from their environments?
Well, I'd be slightly surprised if companies like Landmark and Schlumberger had signed up to the Mura initiative if they thought Microsoft's subtle objective was to ease them out of the world. No, I think it's very interesting. Microsoft have done an honourable job with Mura. I've read the white papers, and you might think that it was a manifesto for why you should deploy Microsoft technology within your E&P environment, and yet it doesn't. The white papers have carefully avoided sending people down a specific technology road or a footprint. I'm honestly, I guess Microsoft's commercial ambition in all of this is to raise their profile and to have an opportunity to position their technology as part of the overall solution. But I don't get the impression that Microsoft, as part of this initiative, are really trying to, push other vendors out or take out their contributions.
Yeah. Ewan, do you have any comment to make to that?
Not really. No, it's not something that I know very much about, I'm afraid, Hamish.
Okay. Well, it's interesting yourself, Ewan, and your picture again showing the landmark environment, which was equivalent to what we saw from the Oracle one, where the database is interoperability there, and then the landmark software on top. It still appears, looking at that's not, and I'm building on what David was saying earlier, truly open. You've got a landmark area, and then there's a bit for everybody else. If it was truly open, there'd be landmark and everybody else all the way across the top. Do you still see it that way, or?
Well, not in the sense. I think, as David alluded to, I think everything has changed in that we have engineers joining our industry who have a different paradigm, a different set expectation that they're used to, the ability of the software that kids grow up with already to be interoperable and to be to integrate properly. There's just a low tolerance for this kind of thing in the kids that we see coming through and all. And I think that more than as much as anything else, has changed our expectations on the, if you like, the very top level that I showed there, the intuitive interface. We're all being pushed in that direction. For Landmark, it's a legacy of building a system that allowed many tools from many different domains to be able to integrate around common databases, and we're still continuing with that. But I see more effort going into that high-end level. As far as being open or not, then the software development kits that David was talking about, I've been there. They just require the operator or the user to be able to construct the links themselves, and then all the data becomes available. But really, that's I take the point that you can't transfer that immediately to another system, but that's the legacy that we have.
Right. And what space do you see dynamic graphics operating? Because we saw a very similar functionality, if you like, from...
There is certain overlap, but I think for each company it's how each individual bit of software fit together. And I think we provide a toolbox as well, and I think it is the key is how you can integrate the best solutions for each company in the most open system possible. So I think there is still very much a place for...
Any comments from the floor to this issue of standards and things? Because it seemed like what I find whenever you go to these software vendors in the stands, you see some great examples of integration, and but then I try and make it work in my own office, and it doesn't seem to work.
I think the reality is very different, and having worked at BP, looking at the Well Architect Covis integration, you can actually have the link so that it does work, so that you've got a communal area under Linux that the drillers can access and the subsurface can populate their data. But you still have to have the will to use it. So you can have the technology, but you have to have people who actually understand the benefit in order that it's actually picked up. Right. And what I find is that you'll tend to get one or two inspirational users who develop a workflow which is then carried on. But it's even if the solution is there and is working, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be picked up and used.
I think particularly true of your example, Ewan, although it looked really, when you think about the pyramid of data that you needed to do that demo, it's non-trivial to implement that.
Well, in the sense that it's there on two databases, but to get it set up in the first place and to have it flow in a manner where it's being naturally QC'd and you're not having to put intervening stages to process that so that you can trust it in the first place. That takes a bit of effort and a bit of high-level sponsorship first of all. But once it's there forever. And
it's requiring, particularly is that when you're integrating that drilling data, somebody to be capturing that drilling data and QCing it from the drill floor.
But I think the drilling you have to have a robust database as a backup, and you have to have all the algorithms to deal with anti-collision. So I think a lot of software actually has provisioned for planning wells, but without that background, without the database functionality. And I think for it to be credible, you actually need to have that all in place. You can't just sort of join the dots in a viewer and use the data and expect that to be a workable product.
What do you think of what you saw there, Torbjørn?
I think it's amazing. I think this is what kids can play with on PlayStation. It looks very simple.
It looks very simple.
I think the challenge for a driller is not to hit the target, it's all the jobs in between. Like you said, these flat sections. It's how to put together a joint most efficient, and so the gap between the what's going on the drill floor on the top side and from the drilling engineers working on directional drilling, that is this is where the big money is for the oil companies.
Well, I think the economic element as well, if you can say, with the price of oil as it is now, it's economic to drill this or it's not economic to drill it. I think to have that information based on how difficult any particular section of a well is going to be, and you can deviate it slightly, and that will actually have a major repercussion on the financial commitment. And I think that's, again, a very good way of using the information.
Right.
What I mean is actually that
carry on, and then the question from here. Carry on,
it's the improvements made from these kind of software being presented here today is actually the good technology improvements, but the margins impact on the margin from the oil companies maybe not that big as it is to take away all the other inefficiency from the drilling industry. So I think it's very important to, when you talk about the drilling industry, you have to separate it from what's actually going down, what's happening in the well and what's happening on the installation. That is two different worlds, actually.
Yeah, hey, Mrs. Dow again. I think it's for David and Ewan. One of the questions we have been asked, and we support the WITSML standard in our software to a great extent, or we've been questioned if it works, and if it works with somebody else's tool. Obviously, if you support WITSML, it should, by default be accepted as a standard that will send the data to the right bits and pieces. But in the last couple of weeks, I've been asked twice by an operator to give him proof, quote unquote, that it actually works. And I would like to see David or Ewan's perspective on how we can improve that. I mean, best of breed technologies, but if you've been asked by a very skeptical operator that if this is going to work or not, and should I choose the landmark software equivalent on top of the EDM database or something that is developed on WITSML, it becomes a very difficult proposition.
Do you want to start, shall I?
Why don't you have a first, Paul?
Okay.
Thank you.
At the moment, has anybody here played Cluedo? Miss Scala in the library with the lead piping. There is a very tiny element by which your successful implementation of WITSML technology does require you to look at all of the different upstream and downstream components, if I can use that expression, and check there's compatibility between them. Broadly speaking, I would say in 95% of cases, the issues either have been addressed or are very easily addressed. And I think, there have been some issues around dialects, and Jerry, feel free to correct me if you think I'm going completely off base here. But I think there have been some issues getting interoperability between different systems and where different vendors have implemented WITSML very, very slightly differently. But I think most of these things have been worked out now, and I think next year with the release of 1.4, I think we'll see some really good progress towards providing that kind of cast iron guarantee that everything will work with everything.
The development side of things is obviously not an area I've worked with you in the past, Dewey, that I have much experience of at all, of course. But I think one of the problems that I was surprised to see today just how many of these dialects exist. I was aware of that they were around and that we have one. In fact, maybe more than one, as it turns out. But that's something that on our side that we've recognised on the Halliburton side, and the HAL ML system is in the pipeline at the moment. So we're hoping that will resolve a lot of the issues in this kind of dialect standardisation as well. So
how do we get our operators comfortable with, if you say it's WITSML, it's WITSML?
Well, just guarantee it'll work and then figure it out on the day.
Any other? Okay. I was interested in David's final challenge on about the ability for an operator to build the integration layer themselves. I thought that was quite a profound comment, that it meant that we can go and buy whatever software we want and do it ourselves. That was quite a challenge. Do you really think that's to be the case, that we could do the integration ourselves, or an oil company could?
I think you've slightly overrepresented it. I wasn't really saying that anybody can buy any technology and build themselves an integration platform and make it all work. My point was more that it's now very easy using very small development teams, particularly where you get a good match between a bright computer scientist and somebody who's got good domain experience, to identify what the integration touch points are that are required in a particular workflow or a particular set of technologies, and for a small team of 2 or 3 people to build very compelling integration solutions, potentially where a company adds its own intellectual property, just like Johnny did, taking a little, some some basic technology from the vendors, some integration components, and then adding on top of that some integration pieces, and then their own bespoke workflows or other components to build the overall workflow and solution.
Right. Okay. Because that's essentially what you've done in dynamic graphics, is build an integration between a number of different vendors.
Cove is really vendor neutral. That's the whole purpose of it, is that it integrates data from a variety of packages, a variety of sources, and provides a sort of a data handling, so all the data is accessible to all members of the team. Okay. So I mean, it's been developed in conjunction with BP, but there's a lot of other, in fact Baker have now taken it in conjunction with Well Architect. Great. And there are a number of other companies, and I think that there isn't anything quite on the market that with that degree of neutrality. One of the users I have actually said it was the Swiss visualization tool, and I was, is it expensive? Does it come with free chocolate? And he said no, because it is neutral. Okay. It is actually it doesn't actually mind where the data's coming from. It will just integrate it. Great. Yeah. So, and it's a really easy way then of checking for any inconsistencies and verifying data.
Right. Truly vendor. Any comments or questions to? Sorry.
Hossam from Oracle said this morning something which surprised me a lot. He said the iPad is the market driving standards. My first thought was it's not a standard at all. Something developed for the iPad won't work anywhere else. What does the panel think about that?
David?
I think the iPad's a brilliant toy. I love it. I think this comes back to my point. Is the iPad an open standard? Not really. Is it de facto standard? Absolutely. Can anybody and their dog download the development kit and start developing applications in it? Absolutely. If you wanted to deploy technology on an iPad, are there any particular barriers to doing it? Well, unless you've invested a lot of money in Flash, then not really. So I think an open standard, no, but a standard piece of technology, yes. Is it going to completely change the face of the digital oil field? It seems slightly unlikely to me. Although we did get patrol rowing on one the other day, which was quite good fun.
That's pretty much what I can say as well, is that we're being asked by customers to develop applications for it. So in that sense, it's here. The requests are in, the work is being done. Yep. And some of the early work for that, for the daily reporting software that I showed you, that's we've got solutions out that people are using to input data into the database, and so the show rolls on.
But is iPad technology in itself, or is it just a visualization platform? What I'm struggling with in my mind is what's different about iPad from a virtual visualization piece of technology? Is that all it is?
I think I can only really talk to the niche that we're doing this mini development for at the moment, and that's just as a better platform for the daily input of data. It's moving away from pen and paper and pipe tallies and that sort of thing, to be able to provide a more systematic way of cutting out the repeated entry into the system before we get the data in the corporate database. Yeah. Yeah. One person straight in synchronization.
I'm looking forward to see the rugged version for use on the drill for.
We need an IS version, right?
Yeah. Great. Anything else, Ed? I think we'll call it a day then, and just a